When I was about 11 years old, I was attending a boarding school in New York City. Now that sounds kind of strange. I was young, and you may not know that there actually is a boarding school in New York City. It's called St. Thomas Choir School. It's like an English-style boarding school that supplies choristers to this Episcopal church called St. Thomas on Fifth Avenue, and me and two of my brothers went there. It was a wonderful experience. We sang lots of services, we toured, we recorded, we did commercials. My mom did say she would often get dirty looks at the grocery store from other moms who were like, how could you send your boys away? But the truth is we wanted to go there and had a wonderful experience. Well, when we were there in the evenings after dinner and study hall, we had about an hour of free time before we went to bed. And usually what we would do is we would go to the apartment of one of the professors, where we would watch a movie or watch a television show or play a game or something like that. And I remember one particular night in 6th grade, I walked into my math teacher's apartment, Mr. C, Mr. Castlever. There are already a bunch of boys there. And I saw the most wonderful thing that my 6th grade eyes had ever seen, ever beheld before, which was a Nintendo Entertainment System. Remember the Nintendo Entertainment System? I'm not talking about the Wii. I'm not talking about GameCube or Super NES. I'm talking about the original, the Duck Hunt, Legend of Zelda, Super Mario Brothers, Nintendo Entertainment System. And if you were a child in the 1980s, late 1980s, or had a child or had a grandchild, then you know that this was just about the coolest thing on the face of the earth. And so I walked in and I saw the Nintendo and I exclaimed, "Oh my gosh, Mr. C, that is so cool. You are so lucky. Where did you get that?" To which he replied, without even looking up from the screen where he was playing some sort of game, he said, "Well, your parents are rich. Just have them buy you one." And I was shocked. I was taken aback. I left there feeling confused, feeling singled out, feeling put on the spot, feeling hurt. No one had ever called me rich before. And I didn't think I was rich. I didn't live in a mansion. My parents didn't drive fancy cars. We didn't take lavish vacations. But the truth was, we lived in a nice house in a pretty nice town in Connecticut. And my parents both had cars which were reasonably new, and we did in fact take vacations. And they even had enough money left over to send me away to this private boarding school in New York City. You know, we weren't Beverly Hillbillies rich. We weren't MTV Cribs rich. But the truth is, we were rich. And this was the first time in my life that I'd been confronted with that. And I want to talk about that because the reality is, as I look out at our congregation this morning, the reality is most, if not all of us, are rich. And if you don't believe me, then go find the What Percent Am I page on the Wall Street Journal website, where you can put in your annual income and find out just exactly which percentage you are, where you fit in the American population. And then if, like me, your percentage actually isn't that impressive, remember that we live in the richest country in the history of the world. I remember a missionary coming to speak to me and my wife and a group of people in California one time, and he said to us, "Do you know how rich I am? Do you know how blessed I am? I am wearing a pair of shoes right now, and I have another pair of shoes at home. Can you believe it?" And the truth is, if you have 2 pairs of shoes and 2 pairs of underwear, and you have any choice in what you're going to eat today, then you are richer than 75% of the people walking this planet today. The truth is, as uncomfortable as it might be, most of us, if not all of us, are rich. We may not be Palm Beach County rich. We may not be United States rich. But globally and historically speaking, we are wealthy. Well, today's gospel reading contains the parable of the rich man and Lazarus. And if you were listening, it's uncomfortable. It's somewhat concerning, especially for those of us who are rich. We're told that this rich man, who's never named, he has nice clothes, lots of good food to eat, and at his gate is this poor man named Lazarus, covered with sores, who wants nothing but to eat the rich man's leftovers. And then they both die. And Lazarus goes to heaven, and the rich man goes to hell, where we are told he is tormented. And while being tormented, he begs for a drink of water and is told no. And then he begs that someone would go and warn his brothers. He has 5 brothers. He says, go and warn them so that they don't end up in the same place as me. They don't undergo the same torment that I'm experiencing. And again, his request is denied. So the moral of the story clearly is that rich people go to hell and poor people go to heaven, right? Man, I really hope not. Or we're in bad shape. It is true, as many have noted, Jesus talks a lot about money. He does offer many warnings about the dangers of wealth, and yet his main message, of course, is not about money. The gospel is not poor people go to heaven and rich people go to hell. Jesus himself was supported financially by a group of wealthy women. Fellas, I'm sorry, but it's been women from the very beginning. And when he dies, he's laid in a rich man's tomb. In today's epistle reading, the Apostle Paul offers these instructions for Christians who are wealthy. He says, as for those who in this present age are rich, command them not to be haughty. Don't be arrogant. Don't have a superior attitude. And command them not to set their hopes on the uncertainty of riches, but rather on God, who richly provides us with everything for our enjoyment. They are to do good, to be rich in good works, generous, ready to share, thus storing up for themselves the treasure of a good foundation for the future, so that they may take hold of the life that really is life. I love that phrase, take hold of the life that really is life. In other words, Paul says, remember what money is for. It's to do good. Remember that money comes and it goes, so don't put too much faith in it. Remember who your money belongs to, where it came from. It all comes from God. And again, don't place too much trust in your wealth, or you're likely to be disappointed. Christianity is not about money, but money can be an obstacle. It can be a danger if we place too much value, too much hope in our financial worth. So returning to the parable of the rich man and Lazarus, I want to point out a few things to you. The first thing is that this rich man never stops giving orders. He never stops thinking that he is in control, that he is the boss. Even when he is dead, even when he is in Hades, he tries to tell Abraham what to do. Send Lazarus to dip the tip of his finger in water and cool my tongue, for I am in agony in these flames. Chop, chop, says the rich man. Remember that poor guy, Lazarus? Send him to bring me a cup of water. And when that doesn't work, the rich man makes another bold request. Send Lazarus to my father's house. I have 5 brothers, that he may warn them, so that they will not also come into this place of torment. Even from hell, this rich man is trying to get Lazarus to run errands for him. He's trying to get Lazarus to be his message boy. I wonder if you've ever known anyone who, because they were successful in one area of life, thought that made them an expert in every other area of life. We're very good at giving advice, telling other people what to do. It seems like this rich man is the original master of the universe, to quote Tom Wolfe in The Bonfire of the Vanities. His problem is not his money per se, but it's the pride, the haughtiness, the arrogance, the superiority, the self-righteousness that comes along with it. Notice also that this rich man, he never asks for forgiveness. He never admits any wrongdoing. He never repents. The second thing I want to point out is almost so obvious as to be embarrassing, but I still need to mention it. The rich man and Lazarus, they both die. They both die, and they both face God. They both face judgment. And I need to say this because I think that somewhere deep down within each of us is the belief that money and success can save us. That if we just have enough stuff, if we accomplish enough, perhaps we will escape death, escape pain, escape suffering. As I talk about being rich, some of you may be protesting, I'm not rich, but you want to be. You want to be. Deep down, we all believe that success is where God shows up. That success is a mark of his blessing, a mark of his approval. But this parable says that God couldn't care less about our stuff, about our wealth, about our success, that he isn't impressed by our worldly accomplishments. Also notice that Lazarus, the poor man, he doesn't utter a single word in this story. He doesn't do anything. All we know about him is that he lays at this rich man's gate, that he's hungry, that he has sores, which apparently the dogs are licking. That's a really unnecessary detail, but really drives it home. Lazarus accomplishes nothing. He says nothing. He does nothing except suffer. And yet Jesus says he is the place where God shows up. Let me say that one more time. The man who does everything, who's successful and wealthy and has a large family and advocates for himself, he gets nothing. While the man who does nothing, says nothing, the man who suffers receives everything. It's a completely upside down way of thinking about the world, completely counterintuitive. Now, how can that be? It can be because in Christianity, salvation does not come by doing, but by believing. Salvation does not come by having or accomplishing or arguing, but simply by trusting. Lazarus trusted God. The rich man did not. And that's what matters to God. Belief, trust, faith. Nothing that we bring to the table, but only trusting that he will bring everything to the table. I want to point out one more thing about this story. When the rich man sitting in hell, he makes this request to Abraham, who's in heaven. Abraham replies as follows. Between you and us, Abraham says, a great chasm has been fixed, so that those who might want to pass from here to you cannot do so, and no one can cross from there to us. Now, with all due respect to Abraham, I want to say this is not true. There is someone who can and who has bridged the great chasm between us and God. There is someone who has crossed over. There is someone who has made a way for us to be with God in heaven, and that's Jesus Christ. Remember that Jesus says, it is easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for someone who is rich to enter the kingdom of God. And when the disciples hear this, they are astounded and amazed and dismayed and say, then who can be saved? And Jesus responds, with mankind this is impossible, but with God, all things are possible. Remember what Jesus says, I am the way and the truth and the life. No one comes to the Father but through me. In his death and resurrection, Jesus spans the chasm. He bridges the gap between our sin and God's love, between what we deserve and what we actually get, the blessing we receive. Wealth won't save us. Success won't save us. Accomplishments won't save us. But Jesus has. Jesus can. Jesus will. Amen.